بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. We're going to continue today with the kitab Sifatu Bab Sifatu Salat, the chapter on the description of the prayer. The description of the prayer. We stopped yesterday after the Takbiratul Ihram, after the initial, what opens the prayer, the initial Takbir, Allahu Akbar, and the raising of the hands and how high to raise the hands and how the hands should be placed when raising the hands with the palms facing Qibla. And the last thing we did was that the Imam, whoever's leading the Salat, the Imam meaning the Imam of the Salat. The Imam is not necessarily the Imam of the Masjid all the time. In this case, the Imam. Whoever's leading the Salat, whether you at work, in the house, you become the Imam of the Salat. So the Imam of the Salat, يسمعه قال رحمه الله يسمعه إمام من خلفه. That the Imam he speaks loud enough for the people praying behind him to be able to hear him. So when he says the takbir, he says it loud enough so that they know he started the prayer. The same way he has to be loud enough when he comes from out of ruku', Sami Allahu liman hamida. And the same way when he makes the taslima, ula, the first taslim to the right at the end of the salat, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. He has to be loud enough. He should be loud enough so the people praying behind him can hear him. Also, loud enough so when he's reading in the loud prayers, Fajr, Maghrib, and Isha, that the people behind them should be able to hear the Imam. The Imam, whoever's leading the Salat, brothers, because we're the ones who lead the Salat. We can't lead the Salat anywhere we are, and we're not loud enough for the people behind us to hear. There's a way they can't follow along. And like we said yesterday, sometimes if the sisters can't hear, like now, there's no camera on the Imam. So if they can't hear the Imam, right? If the Imam is mumbling, then they get lost. They think we're in the ruku' and we're in sujood. So a lot of times, in those type of situations, the sisters complain after the salat and say, who was leading the salat? Say it was too low, we couldn't hear him. Some sisters down in ruku', some standing up, some in sajda. There's confusion because they couldn't hear the Imam. So the Imam has to be loud enough also for the people behind him to hear when he's leading the salat, the loud prayers. طيب, and the last thing we did was وَغَيْرُهُ نَفْسًا. The person praying alone, the person, not the Imam, أي غير الإمام وهو مأمون والمنفرد يصير بذلك كله. The one that's praying alone, you do those things loud enough for yourself to hear, right? Loud enough that you can hear yourself. Meaning, if you're at work or wherever you are praying, if you're at work praying or wherever you are, that none of us are at work and we scream out, Allahu Akbar, we praying alone, right? Nobody does that. We do what? We say it loud enough so I can hear myself, Allahu Akbar, right? Just like that. And that's enough for those things. Tayyib. Last thing we mentioned yesterday is that the Takbiratul Ihram, the initial Takbir of Salat doesn't start except with the Takbir. And the takbir is to say, the lips have to move, not. It has to be pronounced with the tongue, Allahu Akbar. So we can't walk to the salat, walk up to the rank with, and say nothing and just do this. And we don't say anything. At that point, you haven't made the takbir. The raising of the hands is not the takbir. Okay? The takbir is the statement, Allahu Akbar. This is the actual takbir. The raising of the hands is something different. That's something else. So if you just raise your hands and never said Allahu Akbar, then you never started the actual prayer. طيب, after the takbir, the initial takbir, he says, ثم رحمه الله, قال رحمه الله, ثم يقبض قاع يسراه ويجعلهما تحت سرته وينظر مسجده. After the initial takbir with all of the descriptions with the palms facing the qibla, raised up to either the shoulder or the earlobe. After that, meaning not like this, not like this, not like this, the palms facing the qibla. After that, the hands go as he says, وَيَقْبِضُ قُرَ يُسْرَاهُ, that a person takes and they grab their left, take the right hand and grab the left, as he says, the wrist bone. طيب, كده. Right? He says after that, وَيَجْعَلَهُمَا تَحْتَ سُرَّتِهِ, and he places them, the hands, he says, below the navel, below the belly button. وَيَنْظُرُ مَسْجَدَهُ, and he should look at, the person praying should look at, he shouldn't be looking around, should be looking at the place where the face is going to go in sajda. Wherever the face is going to go, wherever your face is going to go in sajda, is where our eyes should be looking. So he says, number one, and not all of the scholars agree on this, to place the hands under the navel is not something that all of the scholars agree on. But some do see it to be a position that the hands go below the navel. Others argue that narration from Ali radiallahu anhu, a narration from Ali radiallahu anhu, and he said from the sunnah is to place the right hand on the left below the navel. And they've argued that narration on Ali is not an authentic narration. Therefore, it can't be used in this place. And there are other authentic narrations that say that the hands go on the chest. So the ulama differ. Where do the hands go? Some take the position that the hands go below the navel, others on the chest. Of course, the author, according to the author, he says you place them below the navel and you push your eyesight should be on wherever your face is going to go for sajda when we go and bow down. Meaning, we shouldn't be looking around in the salah. If we're praying, we should not be looking around. Our eyes shouldn't be wandering on the room. Right? Our eyes shouldn't be wandering on the room. For example, if we're praying and this door opens, right? We should be focused on the salah. It's a brother coming from making wudu. Right? He went to make wudu, use the bathroom, he's coming back to get in the rain. Right? Or in the salah. Or if we're somewhere else, the only time the eye should come off of the place of sajda, if there's a need out of some fear or something, maybe something's going on, maybe you don't trust the people around you, in that case it's different. As they say, إِلَّا فِي صَلَاةِ الْخَوْفِ لِحَاجَةٍ. It says, except in the fear prayer, which is a specific prayer, and it has a specific description for the need to do so, the need to do so. طيب. After placing the hands, it says, ثُمَّ يَقُولُ سُبْحَانَكَ اللَّهُمَّ وَبِحَمْدِكَ تَبَارَكَ اسْمُكَ وَتَعَالَى جَدُّكَ وَلَا إِلَهَ غَيْرُكَ. The opening dua istiftah, the opening dua before the reading of Al-Fatiha. And there are many different dua adiyah to say before the Al-Fatiha. If we don't know them, then we should try to use this time to learn them during Ramadan. And there is many of them in the small book, Fortress of the Muslim. There's a bunch of du'as in there, Fortress of the Muslim. Some are longer than others. I would advise to try to take something that you can benefit from. Everybody's different. If your memory's not that strong, take one of the shorter ones, start out with that, and then try to move up to something longer. And pay attention to the meanings. And it's not one dua, it's many. It's a lot of them that we can say, inshallah ta'ala. This one is glorifying Allah and glorifying Allah's names and the statement that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah. طيب. طيب. Then he says, رحمه الله, ثم يستعيذ ويبسمل سرا وليست من الفاتحة. After the opening dua, so at this point, we did the takbir, Allahu Akbar, we placed the hands and we said the opening dua, right? Now, after the opening dua, this is still before Al-Fatiha. Before Al-Fatiha. So you got an opening dua, ثم يستعيذ. Then a person says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, silently. Silently. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, silently. I seek Allah's protection from the shaitan, from the cursed devil. ثم يبسمل سرا. And then a person says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, silently. So in the salat, the imam is going to say, Allahu Akbar, and then there's going to be a silence, a period of silence. Why? What's the period of silence for? The opening dua, and then the isti'adah, right? A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Then the basmala, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Now it could be sometimes longer than others. You pray behind somebody, that silence is not as long as the other person, depending on how long the dua is that he's saying. Some of the opening duas are long, and some of them are short, like the one he mentioned. So it could vary. He says, then he reads the Basmala, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and he says, وَلَيْسَتْ مِنَ الْفَاتِحَةِ. And he says, the Bismillah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, he says, this is not considered to be an ayat from Al-Fatiha. And this is an issue we spoke about maybe 2 weeks ago. The differing, and we're not going to go into the detail of that, the differing on the Basmala and the different issues connected to, is the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim an ayat or not, or is it a verse from the Quran, and the different difference of opinion regarding it. But he says here, but وَلَيْسَتْ مِنَ الْفَاتِحَةِ. So he doesn't consider it to be from Al-Fatiha. طيب. After the initial takbir, starting the prayer, putting the hands on the chest, reading the opening dua, reading A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. After that, it says, ثم يقرأ الفاتحة. ثم يقرأ الفاتحة مرتبة متوالية. مرتبة مرتلة متوالية. Now he mentions the reading. After that, a person reads Al-Fatiha wujuban. Wujuban. Obligatory to read Al-Fatiha. طيب. Completely. بِتَشْدِيدَاتِهَا. With the shaddas. And this is important, brothers and sisters. Al-Fatiha is considered a rukn, a pillar of the prayer. طيب. A pillar of the prayer. No salat without reading Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, to the end of the surah. Okay? In that surah, in those ayat, there are 11 shaddas. There are 11 shaddas. If we don't know what a shadda is, that's another problem. It's not hard to find out. But there are 11 shaddas. And this is the point. Allah revealed the Quran with specific wording. Okay? The Quran has been revealed, never been changed, over 1,400 years, never been changed. Okay, Allah revealed it with specific words, the speech of Allah Jalla wa'ala, that it has to be read the way it was revealed. It can't be changed. It's not okay to make a mistake. Do we make mistakes? We make mistakes. That don't mean it's cool. Everybody can make a mistake, and it's, you know. We got to give importance to learning Al-Fatiha. There is no salat for the one who doesn't read Al-Fatiha, as the Prophet ﷺ said, "La salata liman lam yaqra bi Fatihatil kitab." There's no prayer for the one who didn't read the Al-Fatiha. In Al-Fatiha, it's a certain way it has to be pronounced. If we don't know, which is fine, because there's nothing wrong with not knowing. There's no aib, there's nothing wrong, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about if we don't know something. But It is a problem if we keep going on not knowing. To continue not knowing, that's a problem. If I don't know and I don't know, then I need to do what? I need to try to find out, right? So there are 11 shaddas. If we miss a shadda, right, what that does is it affects the whole prayer. There's 11 of them. If I miss one of them, it affects the whole prayer. The shadda contains 2 letters, basically. The Fatiha has a certain number of letters in it, okay? This vowel shadda, it contains 2 letters. If you miss it, if you don't pronounce it right, that means you erased 1 letter. That means you didn't read it exactly how Allah revealed it, okay? Which means you didn't read the Al-Fatiha. Just to give importance and show how important it is to make sure we're reciting Al-Fatiha correctly. And if we don't know it, it's not that hard, brothers and sisters. You get with somebody who does know it, right? And you learn it. And it doesn't take that long, inshallah ta'ala. And inshallah, may Allah make it easy for all of us. Tayyib, he says, you read Al-Fatiha murattabatan. How is Al-Fatiha? How does it have to be read? It has to be read in order, right? It has to be read in order, meaning 7 verses, right? You can't read verse 4 and then read verse 1 and then read verse 6 and then read verse 2. It has to be read in the order that it was revealed. Tayyib, murattaba, as it was revealed in order. Secondly, it says murattala, and it has to be read in order wujuban. It's obligatory to read it like that. It's not optional to read it out of order if you want. It has to be read exactly how it was revealed. Murattalatan. When a person reads it, they should read it with the best recitation that they are able to read it with. And this is something that is recommended to read it, as he says, فَيَتَمَهَّلُ فِي قِرَاءَتِهِ. A person should take their time when reading it. وَيَقِفُ عِنْدَ كُلِّ آيَةٍ كَقِرَاءَتِهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَسَلَّمَ. And they should stop at the end of every ayat, as the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to do. طيب. And then he says mutawaliya. It has to be read continuous. You can't read an ayat, stop for a long pause, you're thinking about something, you lose focus, then come back. It should be read continuous, right? Once you start reading it, read it to the end, Al-Fatiha. If a person stops or pauses for no apparent reason, it paused for no reason, and it's a long pause, number one, they do what? Just pause for no reason. They're reading Al-Fatiha and then they pause, right? A long pause. Or they're reading Al-Fatiha وَتَرَكَ مِنْهَا تَشْدِيدًا. Or they read Al-Fatiha and they miss one of those 11 shaddas. It's 11 of them. They did 10 of them and they missed one. أو حرفا. Or they leave off harf, one letter from Al-Fatiha. He says, أَعَادَهَا غَيْرُ مَأْمُومٍ. That the people who do that, they do what? They miss one letter, or they miss one shadda, which is, in reality, it's the same thing. If you miss a letter, Allah revealed Al-Fatiha just how He revealed it. If you miss a letter, then you didn't read what Allah revealed. You read something, one letter less than what Allah revealed. And that's what a shadda is, the same idea. A shadda has 2 letters. If you miss a shadda, that means instead of reading 2 letters, you read 1 letter. And that's not how Allah revealed it, Jalla wa ala. Those people who do that, they have to repeat, either read it over, read Al-Fatiha over, because eventually it's going to affect the salah. They have to repeat Al-Fatiha. Everybody with me? Not to repeat the whole salah. If they read Al-Fatiha and they know they missed something in Al-Fatiha, that's why sometimes you hear when the Imam leads the salah, he might repeat the same ayat more than one time, right? He might repeat an ayat more than once. It could be that he feels like he didn't pronounce the ayat correctly. So he does what? He repeats it again to make sure he recites the ayat correctly, because the recitation of Al-Fatiha is going to affect the rest of the prayer. The rest of the prayer can be invalidated based on not reciting Al-Fatiha correctly. طيب. So it says the person who is praying alone, right? He has to do what? He has to repeat Al-Fatiha again. And this is important because he knows or she knows that they made a mistake. If a person doesn't know they made a mistake, then that's a whole nother issue. So either the person who made the mistake, either A, is the imam, or B, is the person praying alone. Everybody with me? Now what about the one praying behind the imam? Right? It's either three things we're going to be doing. Either A, we're praying by ourselves, or B, we're praying behind the imam, or did I say A and B, right? Or C, right? We are the imam. One of us, right? You could be the imam. You might be leading somebody in the salah. You're at work, you're home, you're leading the salah. Once you lead the salah, you're the imam of the salah. Okay, so if you're the imam, is one issue. If you're praying by yourself, is another issue. And if you're following the imam, is another issue. The people who have to repeat the Fatiha when they make a mistake is the imam and the one praying alone. The people praying behind the imam, they don't have to repeat Al-Fatiha because the Al-Fatiha of the imam is considered to be their Al-Fatiha. Clear? Everybody with me? When the imam reads Al-Fatiha, this counts for the people behind him, praying behind him. And this is to some of the ulama. Not all of the scholars of Islam agree with that. But according to the author, he's of the position that the Al-Fatiha of the imam is enough for the jama'ah, for all of the people praying behind him. Others say no. Every person has to read Al-Fatiha every rak'ah.
I was told that you have to say Al-Fatiha yourself, even if you're being led. Is that authentic?
That's the other position. One position, some of the ulama say that every single person in here praying, when the imam, even though he says it, every single person has to say it themselves. They have to. This is one position. And if you don't, then it affects your salah. Others say no. The imam's Al-Fatiha is enough for everybody. You with me? So you're talking about the other position that we didn't mention. The author is of the position that once the imam reads, it's enough for everybody. That's what I'm saying. Everybody, all the scholars of Islam don't agree with that statement itself, but we're only going with in front of us for now. طيب. He says, after Al-Fatiha, he says, ثُمَّ يَقُولُ آمين. ثُمَّ يَقُول آمين. At the end of Al-Fatiha, you say, آمين جهرا في الجهرية. That we say Ameen loud. We say it out loud. We don't have to whisper it. We don't have to scream it. We're not in a contest to see who can say Ameen the loudest, right? For the younger ones. We're not trying to see who can scream out Ameen the loudest, but every person should say Ameen loud, okay? Loud when it's a loud prayer. Like we get ready to pray Maghrib now, so the salat is loud, we can hear it. So when the imam finishes the Al-Fatiha, we say Ameen. Everybody says Ameen. Jahra. طيب. Even if, brothers, even if the imam himself forgets to say Ameen, that doesn't mean we don't say Ameen. Every person says Ameen, even if the imam says it silently or if he forgets. طيب. ثم يقرأ سورة تكون في الصبح من طوال المفصل وفي المغرب من قصاره وفي الباقي من أوساطه. Then after we finish Al-Fatiha, after everybody says Ameen, then we read another surah after that. Kamila Nadban. Now the obligation, brothers, the obligation for the salat to be valid is to read Al-Fatiha. Have to read Al-Fatiha. If we don't know Al-Fatiha, if anybody is sitting here and don't know Al-Fatiha, then you should try to learn it ASAP. You should try to learn it definitely before Ramadan is finished. If anybody doesn't know Al-Fatiha, you should try to learn Al-Fatiha before Ramadan is over. We still got a lot of time, inshallah. Try to learn Al-Fatiha and try to make sure you're pronouncing it correctly before Ramadan is finished. So, after Al-Fatiha, we read another surah. Sunnah is to read another surah, and the ulama break it down on what should be read during what time. So it says, basically, for Salat al-Fajr, من طوال المفصل, which starts at Surah Al-Qaf. From the longer surahs, starting from Surah Al-Qaf. طيب. And that goes down, as he says, طيب خلاص. Starting from Surah Al-Qaf on the way down. Surah Al-Qaf on the way down. And in Salat al-Maghrib, min qisarihi, from the shorter surahs in Salat al-Maghrib, which doesn't mean you can't read a longer surah in Salat al-Maghrib, but this is based on the narrations on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. طيب. And then the other salat, meaning Dhuhr, Asr, Isha, that it should be from those surahs that are not very long, not very short, but medium length. Medium length. 2 minutes. طيب. He says, at this point, we've made the takbiratul ihram with the description of it. Wait for the adhan, brothers. Don't follow the application. I advise everybody to wait for the mu'adhin to call the adhan. Who's calling the adhan? We got a minute. So now we did Al-Fatiha, we did the takbir, the opening takbir, Al-Fatiha, the reading of a surah, and the next issue is going into ruku' and how we should be in ruku'. And we'll stop there because it's almost time to break. We'll continue on Wednesday, inshallah ta'ala. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.